Hey, happy Valentine's Day, everybody, wherever you are in the world. I hope you're having a good one. How is everybody in the chat doing? We've interviewed so many people in the last week. I've not had a chance to get my news update programs in. So I am endeavoring to catch up in this one because so much has happened. Let me just go over some of the stuff we're going to be talking about. So I've started to read this book. Well, listen to the audiobook by RFK about Fauci. And even though Fauci's been pardoned for what, I think RFK is going to come for Bill Gates. We will get to that. We will get to that. Obviously, we've got all of this Kanye news. Now, to get in the news headlines day after day after day, I mean, is this stuff all completely manufactured? Is the next headline going to be that Kanye and Bianca have reconciled? They're just doing all this to generate news stories because he was left out of the Super Bowl? I mean, that's one theory I've got regarding this sudden divorce announcement. All right, we've got Justin Bieber was seen at a spa trip on the streets of New York in LA in his dressing gown amid rumors of marriage trouble and turmoil over Diddy friendship. We'll be looking at that. We'll be looking at Trump creates MAHA commission on chronic disease chaired by RFK, which is leading me to believe there's going to be a showdown between RFK and Bill Gates. We'll be looking at Gates, what he said about his 10 billion investment, turning it into 200 billion, how he has tried to rebut what he's calling conspiracy theories around that. We're going to be looking at Simon Cowell cried uncontrollably when Liam Payne died, but wasn't to blame for One Direction star's death because, quote, he was a grown man and you can't bubble wrap everyone. And then, of course, we have got our favorite, going back months and months now. Diddy's lawsuits keep getting bigger and bigger, and he launched the 100 million lawsuit against NBC. Now, we looked at that with Chris Todd the other night on this channel. But if we've got time, we'll go over a bit of that as well. I saw various YouTubers have been reading the entirety of it. And I have been listening to them. And I saw that Jaguar Wright was mentioned as well. Hello, Bailey. It's getting like the yellow pages. Happy Valentine's from Kala, especially to the singles. You are appreciated and worthy, of course. Kim, there's something in the water. Sean, this sounds very interesting as usual. The USA is becoming drama queen central. That's from Kim. Monica Lewinsky, have like 8 hours to catch up on Don't Sweat It. Waiting on all the goss. Well, as you got 8 hours to catch up on, you're in for trouble because I think we've got 4 hours coming tonight and tomorrow night and probably Sunday and Monday even more. I think Monday we've got like 6 hours, 7 hours. All right, so let's put one of our favorite faces on the screen. And we'll delve into this story first. Bill Gates warns RFK is misleading people. Now, how many of you are aware or saw Bill Gates when he was getting interviewed? They said to him, what was your rate of return on your investments in the jabs? And he euphemized it and said it was a 20 bagger. His initial investment was 10 billion. And if you've got a 20 bagger on 10 billion, run the math on that one, folks. So there was a lot of what he called conspiracy theories saying that he'd made 200 billion of a 10 billion investment. And his detractors, they call this philanthrocapitalism, whereby you are purporting to help the world, in this case, saving kids, etc. Remember when Monsanto had that rice? They were voted the most evil company in the world year after year. But Monsanto always fell back on, we are saving the kids from blindness with our GMO rice. Anyway, nobody believed them. And in the end, Monsanto had to change their name because there was so much bad blood attached to the brand. They got bought out by some other company. And yes, Garden Times, Bill needs to be investigated. But we are at the twilight of that, I believe, now. Because this let's go over it more slowly, shall we then? So we have got RFK being appointed, MAHA Commission on Chronic Disease, chaired by RFK. So let's look at the chronology of what's happened here. Trump signed an executive order to establish a Make America Healthy Again Commission, just hours after RFK was confirmed as the Deputy of Health and Human Services, HHS. Kennedy will chair the task force focusing on investigating the, quote, root causes of America's escalating health crisis. The commission will address childhood chronic diseases. Broadly speaking, the commission is the Trump admin's effort to dramatically overhaul the national conversation on health policy. Trump previously said he'd let Kennedy go wild on health issues if confirmed by the Senate. I have prayed each morning for the past 2 decades for God to put me in a position to solve the childhood chronic disease epidemic, said Kennedy. And now, thanks to you, Mr. President, we will make this promise a reality. The commission will look to address health research, the food system, and expanded coverage options. The exec order outlines a need for fresh thinking on physical activity and new technological habits and the role of the private sector, what it holds. It will study contributing causes to childhood chronic disease, such as the American diet, absorption of toxic material, medical treatments, lifestyle, environmental factors, government policies, food production techniques, electromagnetic radiation, and corporate influence or cronyism. Federally funded health research should avoid conflicts of interest through renewed transparency and open source data, according to a fact sheet. The new effort calls for gold standard research on why Americans are getting sick in all health-related research funded by the federal government. On Feb 7th, National Institute of Health announced it was slashing billions of dollars in grants for biomedical research. A judge temporarily blocked the policy shift in 22 states. The MAHA Commission will also collaborate with farmers on the country's food system and ensure expanded treatment options and health coverage flexibility. So, you get the picture. God has answered RFK's prayers, and he's now in a position to go to war with some of these alleged sinister billionaires operating from behind the scenes to manipulate the public. And if you've not listened to his audiobook on Fauci, which I am listening to now, it is absolutely phenomenal. Now, bear in mind that just months ago, they were claiming that RFK was a crackpot in mainstream media. Here's one from, this is marker.com. Bill Gates warns that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is misleading people. And there was a BBC one I had as well. Let me see if I can find that. Fact-checking RFK Jr.'s views on health policy So the BBC was hammering RFK. This was in November. RFK nominated by Trump to be a health secretary. Blah, blah, blah. But what does RFK say about jab safety? Kennedy said in an NPR interview that jabs were not going to be taken away from anybody. He wants to improve the science on the safety, which he believes has huge deficits, and that he wants good information so people can make informed choices. But his critique of jab safety has been roundly dismissed by the experts. See how they gang up on him? And there was a period of time when we couldn't even talk about jabs. We were forced to take all of our content relating to jabs and COVID down. But now, under the Trump admin, hopefully the door is opened and we're not going to get in trouble for speaking about these things. So we're back in action on this subject. While Kennedy has denied on several occasions that he is anti-jab and said he and his children are jabbed, he has repeatedly stated widely debunked claims about jab harm. So they're making him out to be a nutcase conspiracy theorist. This is the BBC just a couple of months ago. One of his false claims, repeated in a Fox News, was that autism, and I'm not going to repeat it because repeating it is publication, but you know what I mean, the correlation. So, my niece suffers from leukemia from age 1, fully jabbed. It's 10 plus years later now. She's approaching teenagers and she has autism and she has hundreds of seizures every week. And my sister lives in fear of this situation becoming really, really serious, more serious than it already is. And they went to a doctor recently, and the doctor was not someone who adhered to mainstream narratives. And he suggested the jabs as a possible cause. So this theory was popularized and discredited, they say, by Dr. Andrew Wakefield. His study was retracted by the Lancet Medical Journey. Multiple countries have concluded there is no link. So this is the BBC. See how definitive they are? Because if you let the government put something inside you, who's to say if something happens in your future that has caused it, when there are so many other factors that work on your body around the clock that you could never possibly identify what is the smoking gun? So it's a catch-all whereby they can say there's definitely no link, because they can always say it could have been caused by something else. And that's what they say about everything that happens after the fact. It could have been caused by something else. And they look at people as if they're crazy when they suggest this, mainstream people. All right, so that's the first thing that they're saying, RFK. We're doing so much JFK stuff these days. I'm getting confused. We got 2 lots of JFK on Saturday, including Oswald's workmate. He doesn't understand tech, so I'm going to have to hold the phone up to the microphone to interview him. All right. Then next up, they're saying, actually, let me just ask you guys regarding this claim of autism and the jab. Put 1 in the chat if there is a chance it could affect kids and create this. Put a 2 in the chat if you do not believe that is the case. You think there's no way in hell that it can be connected. Let's see what you guys think. Looks like we got 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. So looks like we're about 80% ones right now, and it's rising. All right, let's go over to the next thing they're saying RFK was a crackpot talking about. And that is misleading claims on fluoride in drinking water. Now, they're saying this is a naturally occurring mineral recognized to protect teeth against decay, which it is a naturally occurring mineral. But my understanding is it's also a byproduct of the aluminium industry, aluminum, depending upon which side of the pond you're on, aluminium, aluminum, tomato, tomato. But when you just mass add it to water supplies, that's not naturally occurring, is it? And where are they sourcing it from? This article by the BBC starts out saying, yeah, it's a naturally occurring mineral. It's not saying where it's sourced from. My understanding is there is a theory that this is a byproduct from industry also, which costs a huge amount of money to dispose of. But they figured out if they sell it to the government, they don't have to pay to dispose of it. So I don't drink tap water, folks. And this is one of the reasons. But we've also had people on who've talked to us about what's in tap water, from birth control, antidepressants, substances. All right, so RFK has a long campaigned against the practice and claimed that Trump will be, as president, will be advising all US water systems to remove it from public water. I'm going to do another poll. Put a 1 in the chat if you think this type of fluoride that they are dumping in our water should be removed from the water. Put 2 in the chat if you think it's completely healthy for your teeth and it should stay in the water. Excuse me. Looks like you guys are all on RFK side on this one. Kennedy said it was associated with arthritis, bone fractures, bone cancer, IQ loss, neurodevelopment disorders, and thyroid disease. But Professor Avjit Banjari, chair of cardiology and operative dentistry at King's College London, wonder whose payroll he's on, said the potential harmful effects cited have not been associated with very low levels of it used in water programs. I'm going to look at this more closely when I get off this to see where it's sourced from. I don't think they're just putting natural it in there. All right, so the report has proved highly controversial. Dr. Ray Lowry of the British Society notes that the ruling was not an outright condemnation of it. Rather, it suggested that the EPA could investigate further to ensure an adequate safety margin. So on number 1 and number 2 there, I mean, number 1's about letting the government put things in your body, and number 2's also about letting the government put things in your body through water. And personally, I would rather the government was not putting things in my body. Next one. What has RFK said about ultra-processed food? He has been outspoken about his concerns about additives in foods and how a big part ultra-processed foods play in many people's diets. He said it is driving the obesity epidemic. He linked UPFs with a range of medical conditions, including cancer and mental health conditions in young adults. But here's the rebuttal for this one, folks. I mean, anyone with an halfpenny of common sense can see if you're eating processed garbage, it's going to cause a range of ailments. But here's the BBC defending this because they're probably on the payroll somehow or other. The experts are on the payrolls that they consult. That's how it works, isn't it? There is a growing body of evidence that these foods aren't good for us. And although recent research shows many pervasive health problems, including cancers, obesity, and depression associated with diet, but There's no clear evidence as yet that they are caused by UPFs. Again, folks, this is how they get around it. You get jabbed. 10 years later, something kicks in from that. How on earth can you have any clear evidence? You eat UPFs. You've got so many other factors at work on your system over time. How can